You have trained more than 30,000 plus professionals.
We basically use these three tools in a workflow. Whenever I have an idea, I give this to will generate the script for me with polished version.
Where do you see computer science course of 4 years? Are the college obsolete?
We did this experiment. Let's ask teachers, do they use AI to create assignments? They said yes. We asked students, do you use AI to solve these assignments? They said yes. And then we also asked teachers, like, do you use AI to evaluate the assignment? And they said,
Anything which you feel like, oh, you should use this or you should use that on GPT-5.
found a different tool which is like is really good at like voice cloning. Education should embrace the curiosity rather than suppressing it.
How should one walk through this whole set of model thing where you have SLMs, LLMs, even media models?
In this AI evolution, the bottlenecks would be human beings, not the AI.
What kind of skill as an engineer I should be having to sustain myself for the next 2-3 years? So I've got to know about the simulation thing, which is quite intriguing. And in future, when there'll be robots and drones, ultimately the loop which is going to come to the end, that experiment and testing will happen through these simulations. Yeah. So what you guys were doing at that time is actually something which right now is being used in drones and other places, where the second it gets into that ecosystem where you have, let's say, noise, images, vision and all, it accordingly take an action and then work. So all these surrounding things basically come into the picture with that. So that's quite an interesting thing. And then you have trained more than 30,000 plus professionals. Okay, and this, which is a huge number. And that brings up to a very interesting question, which I think everyone needs to know. What kind of skill as an engineer I should be having, let's say, to sustain myself for grow myself for the next 2-3 years? Is it like I should learn how to code at a faster pace or do something else which basically can help me grow? Like, what do you think, like when you're training these folks, what skill one should gain in terms of keeping myself at the top of this game as this change or this industry is evolving at a very fast pace?
Interesting question. So I'll connect the story where I left, and I think then maybe I come to your answer because these two things are connected. Yeah. So I was talking about the experiments we did, and one of the things while I was doing these experiments is that something which I realized that for somebody who is not involving or maybe not running these kind of experiments, for them this entire world looks like completely, I would say, overwhelming, really overwhelming, as well as I would say hard to begin with because there's so many open paths someone can take. For example, like you can go in the content route, you can maybe use simulations, you can create an avatar. So the current process of our avatar is very straightforward. You use HeyGen and you clone your HeyGen avatar, then you use 11 labs, you have your voice cloning, and then you have Claude, which is basically a Claude project where we uploaded all the past scripts which have performed well for us. And then we basically use these three tools in a workflow where whenever I have an idea, I give this to Claude. Claude will generate the script for me with polished version. And then I put this into 11 labs, generates the voice, and then I sync this voice with the HeyGen avatar. And the reason why we're able to use or maybe identify these three tools, because when I first used HeyGen, it was a great tool for AI avatar, but it had not so great voice outputs. So we need to figure out a solution. That's why I said, like, in the Excel sheet, if you know the limitations, then you can work around those limitations. So we found a different tool, which is like 11 Labs, is really good at like voice cloning, but doesn't do avatars. So it's like, okay, let's combine the 11 Labs voice cloning with the HeyGen video avatars. And then like for the writing part, Claude is basically our go-to writer, which we basically use and test. So now coming back to your question here is that what skills somebody should prepare for. I would say this is one of the most important skill which I learned after doing all these experiments, is that I would call this again building AI workflows, which you can only learn by again being in a constant exposure of different tools under a certain niche, or maybe you can pick this niche as something which you're passionate about. Because I realize that whenever I tell somebody, okay, you need to if you want to become an engineer, if you want to like do something in XYZ industry, you need to follow this roadmap, you need to follow these steps. And I can tell you that 90% of the time, people just like seek advice, they don't follow it. And one of the reasons what I realized after doing this entire thing, and the number has gone from 30,000 to 50,000 right now. So we have trained like 50,000 plus students through our like sessions. But yeah, I think one thing which I really realized after doing all these things is that education should embrace the curiosity rather than suppressing it. And I think what a traditional system is failing at today is that they are just like putting a very rigid structure that is not flexible and personalized to an individual need. So what happens as a result is that I feel very demotivated to do anything because I don't have a reason, and this reason is not compelling to my personal vision, what I want to do in my life. So the result of this entire thing happened, I would say, actually this was like again my schooling movement. I was a very distracted kid, and I used to always sit in computer lab. I was 3 year old when my dad got me a computer, so I was like I used to play games, and there was a time when I cleared all the levels of this game, and then I was like really frustrated that I can't play more, so I started like sketching the next level. And then one day I had this idea, okay, how can I convert this sketch into an animation? So I went to one of my cousin, and he taught me Macromedia Flash. This was a software back then to build 2D animation and the games. So I learned this software. I was in class 6, I guess, and I ended up like building a new level for that game. And then I started like, I think, enjoying that as this is like really, I think, magical moment for me back then.
Was
like
it Midtown Madness?
not Return Man. It was a stickman game. If you remember those stickman games, they used to like a mini clip. Yeah, used to the company. Yeah. So yeah, for me, like this was a moment back then in my life. Like, okay, now I can just put things into an existence from my thought process. So I thought of it this level, sketched it out, and this is what I'm playing today. And that gave me like really, I would say, good dopamine boost as well. And I became even more, I would say, careless toward my studies. And I went like all in into this animation and like building games. So I got my first check because of this when I was in class 10th, by the way.
Wow.
And that's where like I saw, okay, this is not just for fun or hobby thing, and something which I can maybe turn this into a profession. But until then, I will tell you, like, everybody around me used to tell me that you are just distracted, you don't focus on education. It's a common remark I used to get from my teachers, like, focus on education, this is extracurricular. The irony of my life is today I'm running an education company, teaching other people about technology. So I did listen to them, I did focus on education, but I think what I really found throughout this journey, why I told you the story, is because having and finding this intrinsic motivation, that for me it was maybe building game back then because that excites me, and that helped me to learn about the fundamentals of physics and the games. And that is where I learned physics first time. It's not because I have a test tomorrow, it's because I need to like build this game, and this game requires me to understand gravity. And then I basically went ahead and read the entire chapter of gravity. So like that really helped me to like learn all the concepts and still remember all those things, right? I don't remember a lot of other things which I just like crammed for the exam. And I think this was a very important insight for me, like when I was designing the 100x course. So again, correcting this to back the experiments, after realizing that these are the skills someone should use, and this is something which maybe a person who is starting their journey in this industry, like this is how they approach, I would say, upskilling. We were scaling this agency back then. This was AOS Labs, and we were like working with different clients. One of the common problem we had is like finding engineers who are good at applied AI, because applied AI as a subject or as a field was not very evolved back like 2 years back, where most people what we were looking for. So we had like two kind of profiles mostly when we do hiring. ML engineers, this is back, I was telling back then, and another one is like full stack engineers. Full stack engineers are great at like building the entire solution, but ML engineers come with that ML experience and the AI models. The problem with that, these guys don't talk to each other, and they don't want to talk to each other. It's like I know I can do this. I can say build this model, and then the full stack guy knows that they can like build the full stack application. For our use case, we didn't need somebody who is like I would say focused on one path, because what happens, for example, in the applied AI, what we are doing is that our use case was mostly to understand these models, find a use case, and build a product. So it's basically an intersection of both of these things, and this is what we initially realized as a role, the applied AI engineer, which is now very famously known as AI engineer, coined by Swix, which is the founder of Latent Space. I highly recommend people should check out the article. So maybe we can put the link in the description. It's a great article which describes the exact same problem which I was facing. So he wrote the thing that this is the rise of an AI engineer, and this is the new field which will basically boom in the future. So, and fortunately we were at the epicenter of that. And I realized that yeah, this is a problem because we are not able to find these kind of people. So we have to either hire the ML guy or the full stack guy, upskill them into applied AI, and then basically start putting them into projects. And that's where like I got the insight. Okay, I think this is the role which every engineer needs to prepare for in the future.
Wow, wow. And I'll tell you, I can totally relate to this because so there are two interesting things. Last week, we were in a campus drive. We were planning to hire. It was a big hire which we were doing, and there were a lot of students. And like I usually, and I was there in the drive and was interviewing the candidates. And this was more of like a AI hiring happening. And students, when I asked that, okay, can you code and basically show some basic level algorithms, that was not even asking AI, but they've trained themselves on the AI front. They were answering in Java. Okay, and so the algorithm, so when I asked that, can we do something with C++ or Python, the entire schedule was driven from Java side. And then they definitely had some idea on C++. They have not used Python. They said no, they do not understand or have used Python. That brought up a big question. Like, what is the evolution? If someone is getting trained on the AI front and they're looking for an AI job, then if they are basically solving complex algo problem statements and all with respect to Java, and then the idea is that they are about to be ready to get in the industry. So what is the AI thing which they've done? Like, for example, have they worked on a model or something like that? No, but they just know that, okay, fine, I want to solve this algo, I can use Java. Definitely it's good, but is it relevant? That was the main question. Because for us, we had a question mark. So we thought that, okay, fine, let's hire because they're good in algorithm. We'll figure it out. We'll train them and make sure that. So for us, whenever we are hiring, it's like there's a 6 months of training duration where the idea is to make them understand what is currently going on and solve it. The second point which you raised was also exactly on point, that so there is a full stack engineer, which is like a front end, back end, and doing things. Let's say Python, Django, React, React.js native. And then there is basically an engineer. And the AI engineer, they'll be able to go to Hugging Face, get the model downloaded, show you some let's say precision score, F1 score and all, and run some model and give it to you. If you will ask them, okay, I want to build this into an application, they'll, like, to the largest extent, they're gonna build a small Python code or a basic Flask code, or they'll write something which is not as per the standards where these full stack guys use from the framework perspective. So the way I'm dealing with it is I'm training the AI engineers with respect to at least one framework. They should know at least, they should have some idea about how microservices work, what's a framework, so that they can do those things by themselves instead of relying on the full stack folks. So this is something which is going on in the industry, where to find a person who is an AI engineer who understand the high level orchestration, it's a little difficult to know. So I can totally relate to what you said. One quick question, which is like very important because you just touched this topic. Do you think that colleges, especially in computer science, how relevant they are now? Like, for example, we have seen the kind of change, especially the information technology industry is going through. And it's not just like going through it in the last 2 years. Before that, we had blockchain coming in. Last decade was, there was so many things going on the blockchain front. And then from there, it shifted towards AI. And then again, we'll have this evolution happening. Languages are changing, frameworks are evolving. But if you look at the courses, it's a big gap between what they are being taught versus what's out there. So, like, where do you see a computer science course of 4 years, where it is going to lead to, or what kind of change it require? Like, how do you see, are the college obsolete, or there's still something there? Like, what are your thoughts?
That's a very deep question, actually. That's a question to our education system, actually. But I think I've done some study there, and that's one of the problem statements which we are also trying to solve. But I'll give you like an incident. Recently, I spoke to some of my batchmates, and then like also the students and the teachers who are currently there. They're studying computer science from the college, and I won't take the name, but there are a couple of colleges which I've spoken to recently. So we did this experiment. We said, okay, let's ask teachers, do they use AI to create assignments? They said yes. And then we asked students, do you use AI to solve these assignments? They said yes. And then we also asked teachers, like, do you use AI to evaluate the assignment? And they said yes again. So what we got to know is that everybody is using AI. So AI is designing the assignment. AI is basically solving it, and AI is evaluating it. Humans are just facilitating it. That's the current reality of like colleges and like most of the school system as well today. And people are okay about it. And students know that the teachers are also using AI. It's just like they are doing this because they have to do it, and that's their job. I think that's funny, but I feel that's also very concerning for our education system, because I feel like if this is how people are graduating, if this is how they are getting into the workflows, I don't think they are ready for what's coming for them. I don't think this is like the real world is really hard. Like when you basically solve a problem, you don't get all the help like from say maybe your like say computer or peer. You have to go and deep down do the study yourself in the research. And if you don't know fundamentals, especially like when you talk about like first principle thinking, right? I don't think like you can go far here in this journey, especially software being like a very problem solving first field. So you need to know and you need to learn that skill, which unfortunately this if you are using this particular way to teach people and evaluate their assignments, I don't think they'll learn ever how to solve problems. And this becomes a very important question mark. And I was doing this thought experiment with my team that if somebody has to design a new education system today, maybe starting from school itself, or maybe like say undergraduate college, having said that, that you will get all the subjects on demand, because today ChatGPT can tell you everything and they can teach you anything.
Yeah.
What are the skills you will still teach your kids? We can maybe actually do this experiment right now with you. If you have a kid right now, I don't know if you have a kid or not. So let's say like if you basically in future you'll have a kid,
Okay.
and your kid basically can learn anything from ChatGPT or AI, and he's say probably smart and he can figure out things and he's learning things.
Yeah.
Will you teach him something still, like, and what are those subjects would be?
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I'll try to answer. Number one, most important is human interaction. I would want the child to understand how to interact, what to interact, when to interact, and what should be the overall process of interaction end to end. That gets into the second level of it, where I would want my child to use these systems, but ultimately they are able to produce novel ideas while the grunt work is being taken up by these systems. So the mechanism of thinking has to evolve. The child should think around how I should use it to achieve my outcome. That is important for the child to know. So that's what I'll basically train from the perspective of that child, that evolution, the mechanism of thinking need to change. They need to know what is a grunt work and what is the work which is like a novel idea. So it's like you can take an example of photographer. You click a photo, okay? If there's a photo, and then there can be three different kind of photographers. One who has a phone can click a photo. The other one with the same camera can click a better photo. So that creative angle, eventually there'll be a lot of work which AI will do. What will be the novelty? That's basically the outcome, the process of thinking, and that creative angle which is going to come out. So what I feel is that that child need to know how to use it to ensure that the grunt work is taken by it, and then that novel thinking need to evolve. So that human interaction and that novel thinking are two important aspects which I would want that child to.
That's a great answer actually, and I completely agree with this, because this is something which even we are now coming to as a conclusion, right? Because I feel this is going to happen very soon in future, where you don't need to like study or memorize subjects, because you will get intelligence on tap. So why do you need to like memorize say certain facts about the history? I would say you still learn maybe historical events, but not just to memorize it, but to like understand how people have solved problems before you, and then learn from that problem solving. I think so that the question becomes what you also correctly mentioned, two major part. One is the human intervention. We call this like human in the loop process when we design AI agents, right? Like because agents are not really good at like I would say interacting with other human beings, especially when you put them in a team. So you need a manager. And by the way, this is also by Microsoft Work Trend Index. So they have mentioned this as one of the most important skills which is now coming up, like having this ability to manage AI agents in your team. They call this frontier firms. Firms who are using AI agents as the employee, they are outperforming other firms who are not. So this is like common study which like came across from that study as well. And one thing which I really like agree with what you said and what like Microsoft has put in this report is that having this understanding of like talking to human beings and understanding their problems, and then going back and doing this critical thinking that what is the drudgery and what is the part which I should focus on, and use my human intelligence. I think this is the critical thinking skill which somebody needs to like either teach or maybe like learn. And I think this becomes a very important part for us, like how do we basically like communicate this and like teach this to our students, because if you look at again, I would say, going back to the skill question, is that if everyone is available, or maybe like GPT can do, or maybe any LLM can do like all these tasks which requires you to like memorize things, then what are the skills which AI cannot do until we hit the AGI mark? Like, I think these are the same question which we obviously asked you. Like I think this is a exercise which I'm doing these days currently. So hopefully like yeah, that's basically like the agenda, is that gathering all these skill set and putting it into a curriculum, so that will teach our, you can say, kids, and they'll be like more prepared for the upcoming era. Yeah.
Jumping to an interesting thing which is happening right now, which is like GPT-5 has come in August, and now with this evolution, there are a lot of new things which have come in GPT-5 which were not there in GPT-4. For the audience, which is like who are using GPT-5 on a regular basis, with GPT-5 coming directly as of now, for people they don't need to, I think, upgrade and use it. Any specific suggestion, anything which you feel like, oh, you should use this or you should use that on GPT-5?
Yeah, I think so. Recently, I went to OpenAI Summit. So OpenAI did this event in India. This is the Education Summit, and it's one of the first event which they did. So they're expanding in India and hiring people here. And I was talking to their team, their product managers, and people who are there. And I think one thing which I got from that like meeting as a takeaway is that there's so much happening inside these like frontier labs which people are not aware about, because they still think that the GPT they used 2 years back is the same GPT, right? So they never have utilized the full potential of what an LLM can do today. And this is also like, I think somebody said this to me, is that in this AI evolution, the bottlenecks would be human beings, not the AI. Because the AI is like much better today, but the ability for us to utilize its full potential, it's something where we are lacking at. So I don't think like we have like fully utilized even the GPT-4. And then now we have GPT-5, right? So, but I think coming back to your question, like what somebody, I would say, as a practical advice can take away, it's the study mode. I found it really fascinating, and they recently released it, and it's like very similar to how I teach also. So I'm really like glad that they actually like took this and put it into GPT. So if you open ChatGPT today and just select the drop down and click on study mode, instead of just giving you answers to whatever question you're trying to ask, it will again ask you a different question, which will help you to lead to a conclusion, rather than just like maybe like again reading stuff from the chat GPT. Now this is a Socratic way of learning. So Socrates, if you know, like this, his famous philosopher, and this is how he used to teach his students, like not by giving them the answer, but by asking them the right question, which can lead them to the answer. And this is something which is really profound, because I realize if you want to do like a first principle thinking, and I mean, we say a lot about this term as jargon. I think it's very, I would say, overly used in this culture, that you should think from first principles. But what is first principle thinking, right? I don't think like most people are aware that how can somebody build a skill. This is another question which basically like I usually ask to students, like when we have these kind of sessions, is that how do you know whether this fact is true or not? Because most time people say that, okay, I need to build this chat application, I should use JavaScript, I should use like this language. But who told you? How was the thing? And how did you validate whether the person who is telling you that JavaScript is the right language is actually the right language? Because maybe I could use, say, Python to build like Grady or Streamlit. That is also an option. And like, but why this is not better? So they don't have answers to those questions, right? Because they never actually went deep there. So I think this is a very important part. Once you have broken down things, okay, this is what we need, and then understanding what is true and what are the things which you are just assuming because somebody told you. And this will also help you filter out the, I would say, signal from noise, because now you can start questioning, okay, if this is the really, I would say, the solution for this technology, then let's find the evidence. And these are the evidence which basically backs. And once you have evidence, then you can come back to it and maybe like design a better system or even more efficient system, right? And this was basically a question which led us recently to building the interface for AGI. So this was one of the topic we were discussing, like how can we build an interface for AGI, because actually nobody has built that, because AGI is like not existent today, right? Or maybe like it is like, but we don't have access to it. But how do you do that? And this was the question which we had in one of the session, and I was like, okay, that's a very good question. So let's start with user interface, and then this discussion went, okay, what is interface to the level of that? Because interface, if you define, it's like a shared boundary between different components. And now interface can be an operating system also. Interface could be doesn't need to be always a UI, right? And then the question became, okay, there are two major type of interfaces. This is one human to machine, and this is called your HCI, human computer interface, and now known as very popularly UI, user interfaces. So this is how your humans interact with machine, and then you have machine to machine interaction. Now this interface is known as API, application programming interface. But what if a machine starts understanding human language? Then what would become the interface?
Just the opposite of it.
Yeah, and this is something which we have, like, I think from our learning, humans communicate with other human being through language, and that is the interface through which we basically understand and we basically like operate in this entire world. And if a language model or maybe an artificially general intelligent model can understand language, then don't you think the language would be the same interface for itself?
Yeah.
Which means like a language based
Kind of
natural language, right? So just by doing this exercise right now, asking these why questions, I think we are also able to conclude to this, I would say, come to this conclusion where we understood that, okay, I think language or something like language would be a better interface to talk to AGI rather than we looking at some dashboards and maybe some like fancy UIs. And this is the power of first principle thinking, what we are trying to basically tell you. And I think I'm really glad that this is something which is now available to most people. So if you're somebody who is learning any topic, any subject, maybe you can start using this type of learning. And instead of like asking direct answer to GPT or whatever LM you're using, maybe you can ask it to ask questions back to you. And maybe like I'll share some of my prompts as well. I have like written down these prompts which we usually use in these sessions and made an open source repository. So we'll maybe like put a link in the description there.
Perfect. This will be very helpful for everyone, 100%. This natural language interface is such an intriguing topic. I was just thinking, basically there can be two versions of it which can come out. A protocol which the system used to interact with us, and a protocol which is much more efficient to interact on its own. So there are instances where the AI systems started interacting with each other in a different language altogether, which is not known. So what can happen with AGI evolution, that there'll be a much more efficient way of communication, which the systems are using with each other, which is still a language, but in a very different manner. And then they simplify it and maybe convert it to make sure that that protocol is the natural language protocol which is being used with us. So it's like ultimately we are not controlling that natural language interface. Ultimate controllers are the machines which basically convert it for our simplification and using it. So, but quite interesting topic. So coming to this part where now we have these GPT-5 models, we have smaller models too available. Like as an entrepreneur who is starting a journey, I'll always be confused with like, okay, fine, why not I'm gonna take the biggest model, get the best output and use it? Or I can have these smaller models running around with me, and I'm always confused like which one I should be using, because tomorrow there can be a larger model which can become more efficient. So there'll always be some kind of threshold, there'll always be some kind of trade-off which is going here and there. What according to you as an entrepreneur, the mindset should be around these trillion parameter models, billion parameter models, and let's say the smaller models? Like how should one walk through this whole set of model thing where you have SLMs, LLMs, even media models and specialized models? So like what should be the thought process for an entrepreneur?
I think that's a good question, but I don't have a very good answer to it. I'll tell you like how I do it today, so maybe that can help maybe viewers to understand it. So right now this is very intuitive for me, and I would say if how I use my current workflow. Say I do research a lot, and if I have to do a research about a particular topic, instead of me doing manually, I mean, we put like this prompt manually to say GPT, Claude, and Gemini, I use something like Open Router. And this platform is like open source, first of all, and freely available. And how I use it, say I have to complete this research task. I put a prompt, and instead of me going through different GUIs of these LLMs, I used this CLI, which is connected to like multiple LLMs. As long as like you can find an API on internet, these guys can connect that API. So you can simultaneously run say 10, 15 parallel LLM calls, and you can see the outputs performing, how these LLMs are performing against each other. For example, other day I was like doing research about molecules and the drug discovery, and this was like I'm asking like some questions about like the life sciences and the biology, and in that particular scenario, GPT like provided me much better answer as compared to like say the other models which were there. And it's not always same for, you can say, all the categories. Maybe say certain category right now the medical, say GPT is performing well. Maybe for writing, Claude performs really well. And when it comes to say like real time facts, I would say the Grok has access to like Twitter data, so it's able to like get all the trends, and it picks like a lot of like real time data from that. So I think I use like Grok a lot when I to like do these trend analysis on social media. So I think this is an intuition which is built over time, and one of the ways someone can build this intuition for their own niche is by using maybe like a system like Open Router, and instead of like you doing this prompt manually, you can just like put this through this router, and this router will go and call all the APIs of the models which you particularly use and give you a comparison that these are the 5 outputs, and you can then select okay which one you like. Now this is very interesting approach because OpenAI recently, if you like talk about connecting back to the last question in the GPT-5, they changed the way how it works. Earlier, you have to go and switch different models. Like if you want to maybe work on like a very high reasoning task, you need to select the O3 models, and that was their series. And if you're somebody who wants to like do like a quick thinking task and you want to just like a quick answer, you need to switch back to say GPT-4 or mini. But now what they also realize that, because this is a common trend which I'm using and I used to teach as well, key like instead of you thinking about which model is best, you run a router in front of it, and over time you build the insight, and then maybe you can program these insights so that it can learn. And that's the same thing what GPT is doing, that they built a router model which is helping them to classify each and every prompt, whether this prompt require more reasoning, and then it can redirect it to like a higher reasoning power, and if it doesn't, then maybe it can redirect. So it is doing this automatically today. Yeah.
Yes. So essentially, it's important to basically understand the fundamentals to know which model to be used and which one should skip. So it's not a fight between a smaller model and a larger model. It's about the objective which we are trying to achieve. Very interesting. So we are about to have like go to the last question which we have, and this is just an amazing ride which we are having. So I'll just quickly jump onto the question. And so for the engineers and non-technical folks out there, what are the ideas you think have massive potential in the next 5 to 6 years in this context?
Again, that's a very deep question, and I think it's something which even I think a lot about this question every single day. I was having this conversation recently with Bonnie Kraft. She's a deputy director of AI research at Microsoft, and I think what I learned from all these big research labs is that there is so much happening when you look at the life sciences. When I say life sciences, it means like, so one of the thing what they recently built, it's called BioMU, which is a deep learning model that predicts the movement, and not only the movement, it basically creates the entire mini movie of that protein structure. Because if you look at how we work, like every single you can say cell in my body is actually like helping me to like run and like maintain the energy. So the energy is actually maintained by the protein, and proteins are not, I would say, still. They always move around, they change their shape, and they're also like the fundamental of our DNA, right? And people who do drug discovery and like potentially like find the cure of different disease like such as cancer and other things, they need to understand these movements better. So AlphaFold, which came like last year, they helped to predict the structure of protein. And what Microsoft did on top of it is that they now helped us to predict the movement of these proteins. So which would help somebody who is like doing the drug discovery. They can go and look at these models and run these simulations, which was earlier not possible because you have to do these simulations over a time, which requires like a really heavy computation power. So they have like built a very efficient model that can now like build this entire like movie clip of how this protein will fold in future, so that somebody who knows like how to say build a drug around it, they can like capture that insight and maybe like accelerate their process of like building drugs. When I heard about this concept, I was like, I was not aware of that this is even possible, right? And there's an AI for like finding new drugs and maybe like by predicting the protein structure. So I feel like there's a lot of scope in these kind of areas where, which I feel like still really underrated, because everything else which is like already on the social media, like maybe say building the next rapper or the search engine or other things, which is like already overhyped, and there's like plenty of people who are like working on that. But if somebody really want to solve the problem, I feel this is also the best use case for technology, right? Technology should solve problems which humanity cannot otherwise, right? I think like curing disease and basically helping someone's life, I think these are like some really big problems, and now we do have a technology like that which can potentially help so many people to maybe like cure their disease. And I think, yeah, these are the couple of things which I'm personally excited about, which can go big. So material sciences is like a great field, life sciences, drug discovery. I would say like another project is MatterGen. Project Aurora is basically a great open source project which helps you to understand and read the data patterns from weather conditions across the globe, and then you can predict cyclones and other events, which could now help you prepare for that particular population, that if say a cyclone is about to come in this particular season, so you can evacuate that area. That could save like potentially like hundreds or maybe thousands of life. And I think that's also like a great potential, right? So because the research is already there, yet somebody needs to use this research and maybe like build a solution around it, and that's where the engineering, I would say, come in. And yeah, I think these are the couple of things which I potentially like look at becoming really big in the future.
These interdisciplinary domains like drug discovery, bioengineering, even biomechanics going in that direction, or even touching the ecosystem side of it. These are some of those niche domains where even conventionally in normal engineering also was not to that extent for us as computer science or electronic engineering domain folks. So I think touching that and making the AI more interdisciplinary with these niche domains can actually create a much more bigger impact. And definitely, like I can be sure for the drug discovery, there is a huge investment happening in this domain. Huge. And even governments are like across internationally, they are basically spending a lot of money to ensure that they are at the forefront of this game. So I totally understand and agree that these domains will have a big future and big impact. But thanks a lot for the session, Siddhant. And this was just incredible. We have gone from Microsoft Work Trend Index to GPT-5 workflows, future of work, and even how to design the perfect AI native stack. For everyone listening, here's the big takeaway. The future of engineering isn't about if you use AI. It's about how fast you learn to build with it. And Siddhant, thank you for sharing your insights and your journey. And for the listeners, I'd love to hear your bold prediction about AI. Drop it in the comments or DM me. Let's see who is thinking 5 years ahead. And most importantly, what Siddhant mentioned, we'll share all the links with you for your reference. That will be very interesting for you to go through. And definitely, like, it is not about like when you are starting, you can start today, because the journey is going to be a long journey for everyone, including us, to go through this AI engineering side of the things. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.